The woman behind the partition had 4 arms and the patient stillness of someone who had never once been wrong about a record. I had been waiting 40 minutes on a bench the Verath compact had designed for a species with a different hip geometry. The bench was not unkind. It simply had not been built for me. I sat on the edge of it with my hands in my lap and my tag between my fingers, turning it slow, the way I used to turn it the night before an action when sleep was not an option, and the dark needed something to hold on to. The hall was bright. That surprised me still after 3 visits. Strand Depot ran floor-to-ceiling glass on the south face, and in the afternoon the light came in flat and white and indifferent and fell across every desk and every partition and every officer's 4-handed paperwork without preference. I had expected something dim. Bureaucracies, in my experience, tended toward dim, low ceilings, bad angles, the feeling of being processed rather than seen. The Verath Compact apparently had no such tradition. Every reclassification was conducted in full light. I did not know whether that was meant to be reassuring or simply efficient. Warden Sahlberg. The officer's name on the placard at her station was Tesek Yavrin. She was old by Verath standards, the archive pale of someone who had spent 30 years reading records rather than making them. She wore the compact's reclassification collar in slate gray, which meant she had authority to amend. She had not yet amended anything in my file. She had been reading it for 6 minutes with the focused attention of a woman locating something she expected not to find. "You are here regarding the Havrin engagement," she said, "not a question." "I am." The official deployment ledger shows no human forces assigned to the Havrin action. She turned one of her secondary hands palm up on the desk, the Verath gesture for presenting a settled fact. No authorization request was filed. No liaison warden attachment was entered. The compact's records for the Havrin engagement are complete and have been verified on 3 separate audits. I know what the ledger says. Then you understand the difficulty. I set my tag on the desk between us. She looked at it with the measured attention of someone who had seen 10,000 tags cross that desk and found nothing unusual in any of them. It was standard issue, titanium alloy, my name and blood type on the front in the compact's own laser-etching format because the compact had reissued all human liaison wardens with updated identification during the joint integration in the 3rd year of the deployment. Clean, official, verifiable. She picked it up. She turned it to the scanner panel on her left and held it there until the reader chimed. The screen above her station populated. Name, rank, warden class, blood designation, issuing authority, issue date. All correct, all matching the ledger. She read it with the attention of someone looking for a discrepancy and not finding one. "The identification is valid," she said. "Yes. It matches your record in full." "Turn it over," I said. She paused. In 40 years of reclassification hearings, I knew this from the compact's published procedural archive, which I had read in full twice before I walked in. No Verath reclassification officer had ever needed to turn a tag over. The compact's standard issue identification carried all relevant data on a single face. The reverse was blank by design. Blank by design because the issuing authority had never anticipated that a liaison warden might carry a personal field punch in her kit and use it the night before an engagement the authorization codes had not yet caught up to, marking the date in her own 2-character shorthand so she would know later when she had been where. Tesek Yavrin turned the tag over. The reverse was not blank. 2 characters punched into the alloy with a hand tool, not laser-etched, not machine-stamped. Hand-punched, each character 1/8 of a millimeter deep, slightly irregular in pressure, the kind of mark that requires a human thumb on a spring-loaded punch and a flat surface in the dark, the kind of mark that tells you the person who made it was working by feel rather than light. 17J. The 17th day of the J-month cycle, the night before the Havrin engagement. Tesek Yavrin held the tag under her scanner. The scanner read the alloy composition, the thickness, the laser etch on the front. It had no protocol for what was on the back. It returned no result for the two punched characters, because the two punched characters were not in any format the issuing system had ever produced, and the compact scanner matched against issuing system formats and nothing else. The reverse marking is not in the identification standard, HFY said. No, it isn't. It is not a format this office can authenticate. I know, it's my format. I've used it since my 3rd year of service. Every piece of kit I own has a date on the back. It's how I know what I had with me when. She looked at me across the desk. The afternoon light came through the south glass and lay across both our hands. A personal marking system, she said. A habit. This office cannot enter a personal habit into the deployment ledger as evidence of presence. I know that too. Then what is it you are asking this office to do, Warden Sahlberg? I looked at the tag in her hand. I had carried it for 6 years. I had carried it through the Havrin transit and the 3 days of holding action on the ridge above the river crossing, and the extraction that the official record described as a standard logistical transfer, because no human forces had been present, and a logistical transfer required no further notation. I'm not asking you to correct the ledger, I said. I'm asking you to note the contradiction. The ledger says I wasn't there. The tag says I was. Those two things can't both be true, and I want this office to write down that it noticed. HFY was quiet for a long moment. Outside the south glass, the light shifted slightly, the way afternoon light shifts when a cloud passes at altitude, a brief dimming that made the room feel exactly the same but slightly more attentive. She set the tag on the desk and drew her notation pad toward her. In the compact's reclassification procedural archive, the one I had read twice, there was a category called indeterminate, defined as a matter in which the official record and a presented artifact cannot be reconciled by the reclassification office alone and must be referred to senior archive for resolution. The compact had created the category 61 years ago for situations involving damaged records. In 61 years, it had been invoked 4 times. All 4 were matters of corrupted data storage, not contested deployment entries. She wrote for 3 minutes. She wrote in the compact's own notation script, which I could read well enough to follow the shape of it if not the exact characters, and I followed the shape of what she wrote with the particular attention of someone who had spent 6 years being told there was nothing to follow. She set her stylus down. I have entered a referral to senior archive, she said. The grounds are as follows. The identification presented carries a marking on its reverse that this office cannot authenticate and cannot dismiss. The marking is consistent in material and age with the claimed date of presence. The deployment ledger contains no entry to corroborate or contradict it, because the deployment ledger contains no entry at all for the warden's unit at the Havrin engagement. This office notes the contradiction and refers it for senior determination. She slid the tag back across the desk. Senior Archive will respond within 90 days, she said. In 40 years of reclassification work, I have not previously entered an indeterminate referral for a contested deployment. I want you to understand that the referral is not a finding. It is not a correction. It changes nothing in the ledger today. I know, I said. I picked up the tag. I held it for a moment, feeling the slight irregularity on the back that I had felt 10,000 times, the 2 punched characters, their slightly uneven depth, the way the first character was a hair deeper than the second because I had pressed harder at the start before I found the right pressure in the dark. But it changes something, she said. Not a question. A statement, the way a woman who has spent 40 years reading records says a thing she has not read before. Yes, I said, it changes something. I put the tag back on its cord and the cord around my neck and stood up from the bench that had not been designed for me and walked out through the south glass hall into the afternoon, where the light was the same light it had always been. indifferent and bright, falling on everything equally, the ledger and the tag, and the small irregular mark that 2 characters wide had outlasted 6 years of official silence. I had been at Havren. The date was on the back. It had always been there.